In this video, I'm going to take you through the React app in the client directory. We're going to go through the different folders, and I'm going to give you an overview of everything that's in there. And then in later videos, we may go into a bit more detail on the actual application and into a bit more into the code. But first of all, I wanted to go overview on the whole thing. So let's have a look. Here's the client directory, and within the client directory we've got VS Code folder, which is just for settings for VS Code, aesthetic settings. Then I've got the node modules. These are the node modules for React. So from the last video, if you remember, the application is basically two applications. It's the server application in Node.js and the client application in React. And both those applications have their own package JSON, and both those applications have their own node modules. The node modules for the server are in the root, and then the files for the server are in the server directory. And for the client, the application is in the client directory, and the node modules are also in the client directory. So here we have the node modules. Then we have the public directory. So this app was created using Create React App. And I think it creates a public directory and also a source directory. So these were created when I created the Create React app, and they are the main. They're the first thing that the browser sees when it gets to your app. So there's got things like the icon for the application and this index file, and this is the index file which you create the div with the idea of root, and that is where the React app lives. So once we've gone through that, then I've got the source directory, which I'll get to, which I'll start going through now. Components, which is where the components for the app live. Then I've got the contexts, and this is for in React, you can manage the data within the app can get managed in state, which can be managed through a class component. You can have functional components and class components in React. So you can create a class component, and that will have its own state, or you can use functional components, and with hooks and contexts, you can give them a state as well. And it actually can get a bit cleaner using contexts instead of the states with classes. Contexts are newer, and I've got a combination of both in my app, and at some point I plan on refactoring the app and removing all of the class components and replacing them with functional components, and then upgrading and then changing the state into another context. But this is where the context lives. So if you imagine a context is really it's a data store which is in memory, and the React app can use, and so that's where the contexts are. Then we have the Tailwind directory. This is just where I can keep my customized Tailwind components. So Tailwind is a CSS framework, a bit like Bootstrap, but it's really at a lower level than Bootstrap. So you create these things called utility classes. Well, sorry, Tailwind has these things called utility classes, which are at a lower level than something like Bootstrap, which might have a button. Tailwind has rounded corners, and it will have borders, and it will have the lower level components that you would use to build a button. And the advantage with using Tailwind is that you obviously get the consistency of a framework. It's also pretty quick to create stuff, and you can build your own components based on their utility classes. So for this app, I've created buttons and things like that, and they are based on the utility classes, which gives them a certain level of consistency, but it also gives you the ability to customize things at a more granular level than what you could with something like Bootstrap, and you do end up getting a better looking result, although the focus of this app at the moment has been more on the back end than the front end. But that's Tailwind. And then I've got a folder called Utils, and in that folder it's just got some miscellaneous things. I've got some data mockups in here. I started just so that I can run the application without actually connecting to a database and using mockup data, and that way it just makes some of the development a bit quicker. I've also got a few utility functions in here which are used throughout the application. And here we've got the app.js and the index.js, which are the entry point for the React application. Here's my app.js. It's basically, this is where all of the components which are children to it get loaded, and also the different contexts are loaded in here, along with the routes that are created through React Router, and I'll show you that a bit later. So here you can see that I've got a bunch of different states. These are all contexts, so auth, document, and alert. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different paths. You've probably heard that React is a one-page application. What that means is that the application doesn't use multiple routes created on the server. So if it was a PHP website, for example, that's server rendered. And what happens is the web server creates the routes for the pages, and then the pages are pointed to those routes from the server. So there may be 30 or so different routes created on the server, and every page has to have another route. The React application, a single page application, is different. How that works is the server creates one route for the application, and the application lives on that one route. And then what happens is the rest of the application is all running in the browser on that one route. And if you go to new pages in the browser on that React application, you're not actually going to server-generated routed pages. What you're doing is the one-page application fools the browser into thinking that it's doing that, but in fact it's generating those extra URLs through something called, in my case, something called React Router. So that creates the links, the URL path, and it also manages the behavior of the browser. So imagine you go to the path and it displays the right page, and then you hit the back button on the browser. So it then circumvents that back button so that it does the right behavior, so that it looks just like a URL that would have been rendered in a web browser. So I've now gone through most of the folders in the React application. You have an understanding of how it fits in with the Node.js application and how it works together at a sort of high level. In future videos, I'm going to go down into more detail. I'm going to look at the actual components and see how all that works. So tune in for future videos, and I hope to see you then. Okay, bye.